I had never noticed how the sunlight hit the driveway until she was there, leaning against the car with that quiet confidence that made it impossible to look away. Her hair, silver-threaded and soft around the edges, caught the light in a way that made every stray strand seem deliberate. She smiled, just slightly, and it felt like an invitation I hadn't earned. "Careful with the wax," she said, her voice low and steady, almost teasing. I could feel her eyes on me as I knelt by the tire, wiping the suds from the wheel rim. The way she stood there, one hand resting on her hip, the other brushing her fingertips along the car's hood, made the air thick, like I was breathing in more than just summer heat. I glanced up, caught her looking. Our eyes met, and something strange fluttered in my chest. She didn't look away. She never did, not quite. Her gaze lingered, warm, patient, teasing in that unspoken way that suggested she already knew exactly how I was feeling, even if I hadn't fully realized it myself. "I think you missed a spot," she murmured, pointing at the rear fender. Her hand brushed mine as she reached across to correct my motion. It was brief, maybe a second, but enough to make my fingers tingle long after hers had pulled away. I swallowed, awkwardly, aware of how close she was, of the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the summer air, something soft, yet sharp, like the scent of ripe fruit in the morning. I laughed, nervous. "I'll fix it." My hands trembled slightly as I leaned over the car again, more aware of her nearness than the suds or the sponge in my hand. She shifted closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence pressing through the space between us. "You know," she said softly, almost under her breath, "I used to watch people clean my car when I was a kid. Always fascinated by how someone could care so much about something so small." Her eyes met mine again, and there was something there, a quiet longing, or maybe a recognition, I couldn't tell, which made my stomach tighten. I worked in silence, my movements exaggeratedly careful so she would notice. Every brush, every wipe, felt like an excuse to stay close, to steal a glance without her calling it out. Her laughter, light and deliberate, came without warning, and I looked up to find her leaning against the hood, hands crossed loosely, watching me with an intensity that made me forget what I was doing. "I'm glad you offered to do this," she said, and I wasn't sure if she meant the car, or just this, me, here, with her. My throat went dry. She smiled again, slower this time, like she was enjoying some private joke I wasn't allowed to hear. The moment stretched. A breeze stirred, carrying with it the faint smell of cut grass and warm asphalt. My hand brushed hers again accidentally, too close, too long, and she didn't pull away immediately. Her eyes flicked down at our fingers, then back up, holding mine. The silence between us suddenly felt louder than any words could be. Then the screen door clicked. We both turned, startled. She froze, a flash of something, hesitation, crossing her face. My heart slammed, because whatever had been suspended between us hung there, unresolved. Her hand twitched toward the car, her gaze shifting just slightly, but I couldn't read it. "Did someone just?" I started, my voice faltering, and she shook her head faintly, almost imperceptibly, but the tension didn't ease. Instead, it thickened, as though the air itself knew what was about to happen, and neither of us could stop it. After the door clicked shut, we didn't move right away. The driveway felt smaller somehow, charged, every stray ray of sunlight slicing across the car a little sharper, as if the world itself had leaned in to watch. I went back to scrubbing, pretending the suds were all that mattered, but I couldn't stop noticing her. She shifted closer, brushing past me as she adjusted the towel in her hands, and the scent of her, warm, faintly floral, with that undercurrent of something I couldn't name, made my chest tighten. I tried not to stare. I really did. But my eyes kept catching the curve of her neck, the subtle line of her jaw when she laughed softly at some joke I hadn't heard. And when she reached over to hand me the bucket of rinse water, our fingers lingered a fraction too long. My palm tingled long after she let go. "I wasn't always," she started, hesitating mid-sentence, eyes darting away. "She always seemed to carry an invisible weight, a hesitation wrapped in elegance. Good at letting people in, she finished quietly, as if speaking it aloud was half a confession. I nodded, not knowing what to say, but understanding more than she might have guessed. Me neither, I admitted, voice low. I guess I've been careful about who I let close. Her gaze softened, but there was still that flicker of wariness. She leaned against the car again, closer this time, her shoulder brushing mine. The contact was accidental, I told myself, but I could feel the warmth radiating through her blouse, the subtle shift in her posture that suggested she didn't mind. I've had relationships before, she said, almost to herself. Long ago. I was younger, maybe reckless. Or maybe just naive. Things ended badly. She swallowed, eyes dropping to the asphalt. I don't do that anymore. Not easily. I understood that hesitation perfectly. I could see the years in her posture, the small guardedness in how she touched the car, the way her voice trembled at certain syllables. I get it, I said softly. I've never really fit where I thought I should either. Makes it easier to stay quiet. Her lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. But the warmth in her eyes betrayed the careful mask she wore. And I couldn't stop noticing the way she lingered near me, just a whisper of distance between our bodies. I wanted to close it, and part of me feared what would happen if I did. There was a moment when she reached over to wipe a stray drop of water from the car, and her hand brushed my shoulder. I caught the slight tremble in her fingers. Sorry, she murmured, but she didn't pull away immediately. I caught my breath without meaning to, aware of her nearness, the soft exhale that drifted against my cheek. You're very careful, she said, her voice lighter now, teasing, but with something deeper threaded beneath the words. She tilted her head slightly, studying me like she was weighing how much to say, how much to hold back. I notice things, I said, shrugging, trying for casual, failing miserably. My heart hammered as her gaze lingered on me. Not judgmental. Not intrusive. Just seeing me. Really seeing me. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that I wanted her to. We moved together around the car, a choreography of accidental closeness. Knees brushed under the car hood, fingers touched as we passed tools, breaths mingled over the suds. And yet, each time our bodies hinted at something more, she pulled back, an inch, a second, a hesitation that only made the tension thicker. Finally, she leaned against the fender, watching me with those eyes that seemed to read every thought I tried to hide. Without thinking, I reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Our hands brushed again, lingered, and I felt her exhale sharply, not nervous, exactly, but something that told me she noticed, too. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Just the soft hiss of water, the hum of summer cicadas, and that fragile electricity between us. And when she finally smiled, slow, small, and private, I thought the world could tilt on that hinge and I would follow it anywhere. A car door slammed down the street, startling us both. She laughed softly, but the tension didn't break. Instead, it settled into something solid, unspoken, a promise hovering in the air that neither of us dared voice. The sun had dipped lower, painting the driveway gold, when I noticed her fingers lingering on the sponge longer than necessary. I wanted to say something, anything, but my voice got caught in my throat. Instead, I watched, heart thudding, as her hand brushed against mine again, this time deliberately, though she didn't meet my eyes. A sudden ping from my phone startled me. I fumbled it up, the screen lighting my face in a way that made her glance at me, amused, a half-smile teasing her lips. It was a message from a friend, and I hesitated, just a second, before unlocking it. That fraction of distraction was enough. She leaned forward, closer than she had been all day, and the warmth of her chest pressed subtly against my shoulder. I froze, aware of the pulse racing in my neck, the small intake of her breath that brushed against my ear. I started, unsure whether to hand her the phone, or hide it, or pretend nothing happened. My words trailed off. Her fingers traced a path along the sponge, lingering over my hand again. "Don't worry about it," she said softly, eyes now fixed on me, unreadable. And just like that, the ordinary driveway, the suds, the bucket, the heat, had narrowed to a space where only she and I existed. I swallowed. The thought of how wrong this felt mingled with how right it seemed, twisting together in a strange, addictive knot. She shifted slightly, and the faint perfume that had been teasing my senses all afternoon grew more pronounced, a subtle warmth that made me acutely aware of every inch between us. "I should probably finish this side," I muttered, moving the sponge up the car. My voice sounded too loud, too brittle. She didn't budge, though. She followed me, hands tucked loosely in front, just close enough that our arms brushed occasionally, fleeting sparks traveling up my nerves with each accidental contact. "Funny," she said, voice low, almost a whisper. "How easy it is to forget someone else is even around." Her eyes held mine, unflinching, and I felt my breath catch. I wanted to tell her how impossible it was not to notice her, not to think of her in ways I shouldn't. But I didn't. I just nodded, and our movements fell into a rhythm of near touch, near confession, the air around us charged with everything we weren't saying. Then I heard a faint sound, a neighbor's lawnmower down the street, and instinctively she pulled back, as if reality had whispered a warning. I noticed the way she straightened, shoulders stiff, lips pressed together, as if to remind herself of boundaries that neither of us wanted to respect. But when she turned back to me, her eyes softened again, holding mine longer than necessary. I could feel her inhale, and the brush of her hair against my temple made my pulse spike. My hand twitched toward hers, and for one heartbeat, it hovered in the air between us. I leaned in without thinking, drawn closer by the weight of all those lingering touches, the unspoken admissions, the thin thread of possibility that hummed like static. Her lips were almost, so close, but then a shadow passed across the driveway. A car door clicked somewhere behind us. We jerked apart, a fraction, startled. Our breaths mingled in the space between us, ragged, uneven, desperate. I caught the faintest tremble in her hands, and she looked away quickly, hiding it as if it hadn't happened. We stood there, chest to chest, closer than ever, hearts hammering, yet anchored by fear and guilt. I wanted to bridge the distance, to close it fully, but the world outside, their eyes, the rules, the impossibility, kept us suspended. And yet, in that suspended heartbeat, nothing had ever felt so real, so raw, so unavoidably ours. And when she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible, "We shouldn't." But the brush of her hand against mine lingered. And we didn't move. The afternoon had slipped into golden hour, the sun melting behind the trees, painting everything with that fragile, almost sacred light. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been this close to someone, so close I could feel their heartbeat in the air between us, smell the faint warmth of their skin, see the almost imperceptible tremor in their hands. She was leaning against the car again, closer than before. Her hair brushed against my temple when I moved just slightly, the scent of her, soft, intimate, almost cloying, filling my senses. I tried to focus on the soap in my hands, the mundane task of cleaning the car, but every line of her body, the way she shifted against the hood, undid my concentration entirely. She started, hesitating, and I could hear the catch in her voice, a fragile thing that made my chest tighten. "I shouldn't, don't," I whispered, almost without thinking, my voice low, carried with something I couldn't quite name. She froze, eyes wide, lips parted slightly. I took the step closer I'd been holding back for hours, just enough that the air between us seemed to compress. My hand moved on its own, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The motion was gentle, reverent, but I could feel her shiver under my touch. Her gaze dropped for a second, then lifted, meeting mine again. Something raw passed between us, fear, desire, longing, guilt, all tangled together. I wanted to reach for her lips, wanted to erase the caution in her eyes with a single bold act, but I hesitated, aware of the impossibility, the risk, and yet, unable to step back. "You know we can't," she said, her voice trembling slightly now. The words should have been a barrier, a warning, but they only drew me closer. I could hear the rapid catch of her breath, smell the warmth of her skin mingling with the fading sun, see the tremor in her hand when it brushed against mine again. "I know," I breathed, low, deliberate, letting my forehead rest lightly against hers. "But I can't stop noticing you." Her eyes widened, a flash of something unguarded, vulnerable, flickering there. She leaned closer almost imperceptibly, her hand brushing my chest as if testing the boundaries I was too willing to ignore. My own pulse roared in my ears, every nerve alight, every breath a precarious bridge we were both walking. "I shouldn't want this," she whispered, voice breaking, lips nearly grazing mine. Her hand slid slowly up my arm, the touch light but incendiary, and I felt the last of my restraint shatter in that simple, terrifying contact. "Neither should I admitted, my lips hovering just an inch from hers. I could feel the warmth radiating from her, taste the faint sweetness of her perfume on my lips, hear the shallow rhythm of her breathing in perfect counterpoint to my own. Every second stretched, elastic and unbearable, and yet impossibly electric. She trembled slightly, leaning forward just enough that the world outside disappeared. My hand found the nape of her neck, gently cradling her as if I could hold back both the world and the consequences with a single motion. Her hand pressed lightly to my chest, grounding herself, or maybe grounding me. For a moment, nothing existed but us, the driveway, the fading sunlight, the soft hiss of the garden sprinkler in the distance, the almost imperceptible quiver of her lips under mine. Then she whispered, almost a sigh, almost a dare, "Are you sure?" And in that split second, everything, desire, guilt, hesitation, longing, poised on the edge. My lips were inches from hers, and neither of us could decide whether to fall into the moment or pull away before the impossible happened. A shadow flickered across the driveway behind her. A car door. A sound we couldn't ignore. And just like that, the world intruded, leaving us breathless, inches apart, suspended on the brink. The shadow from the driveway didn't fade as quickly as I'd hoped. It lingered, echoing in my chest long after the car door slammed somewhere down the street. I thought we could pretend it hadn't happened, that the moment hadn't stretched impossibly thin between us, but then she spoke, her voice low, controlled, yet with a tremor I hadn't heard before. "There's something I haven't told you," she said, stepping back slightly, as if the words themselves could push danger away. Her hands twisted the hem of her blouse, fingers tight, almost trembling. The air between us thickened, almost suffocating. I swallowed. "What is it?" I tried for casual, but my voice betrayed me, tense, uneven. My fingers itched to reach for hers, to anchor us, but I froze, aware of the taut line of her shoulders, the way she held herself rigid. She stopped. Looked at me. Her gaze softened and yet burned, and I felt a tingle of anticipation mixed with dread. "I know someone overheard us the other day. Your neighbor, she saw us, close like that." I tried to. "I didn't want you to know because I thought it would ruin things." I felt my stomach twist. My pulse quickened, not just from the lingering warmth of her nearness, but from fear, from guilt. Safe had evaporated. Every inch we dared to bridge suddenly felt perilous. My hand brushed hers instinctively as she stepped closer, almost apologetic, almost teasing, and the contact sent shivers up my spine. "You, what?" I whispered. The words sounded absurd, fragile. "They saw us?" "Yes," she admitted, and her lips quivered just slightly, though her eyes stayed locked on mine. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want this," she gestured between us, the space charged with unspoken things, to feel dangerous. Or complicated. I wanted to speak, to protest, to tell her it didn't matter, but my tongue failed. I could only watch as her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, the sunlight catching the silver threads in her hair, making them glow like something fragile, untouchable. I could feel my heart hammering, my hands itching to hold her, but the risk, the world outside, loomed large, a silent predator waiting to pounce. She stepped closer anyway, as if drawn by the same irresistible pull I felt. Our thighs brushed, our shoulders pressed near, and the tension snapped tight like a wire. Every nerve ending sparked, every glance and micro-movement loaded with electricity. Her hand hovered near mine, then settled on my forearm, warm, deliberate. "I'm sorry," she murmured, voice barely audible. "I didn't want to scare you. Or ruin this." Her apology, soft and intimate, made the space between us shrink unbearably. I could feel the faint tremor in her fingers, the way her breath hitched when I shifted slightly closer, brushing my hand against hers. "I'm not scared," I admitted, though my chest tightened at the truth of it. I don't know how to, not want you." Her eyes softened, yet there was fire there, the same uncontainable desire I felt, tangled with fear. She pressed a hand lightly against my chest, then stepped just enough that our bodies almost, but not quite, melded. The nearness, the smell, the warmth, the pulse of her heartbeat against mine, it was more than I could bear. "Then what do we do?" she asked, voice trembling, but eyes steady, unwavering. I didn't answer immediately. I just let my hand hover near hers, letting the tension speak. My pulse matched hers, quick and raw, as if the universe itself had narrowed to the inch between our bodies. Her lips parted slightly. A faint breath escaped. And though the danger hovered, the secret neighbor, the impossibility, the guilt, everything in me ached to close that distance. "Do we stop?" she whispered, almost daring, almost desperate. I shook my head, a small, unsteady movement. "No," I said, low, almost more to myself than to her. "Not yet." Her hand brushed mine, our fingers twining just slightly. The world outside had shifted. Risky. Forbidden. But also, inevitable. And in that breathless pause, with the driveway fading into shadow around us, I realized we were teetering on the edge. The driveway was silent, save for the soft hum of the garden sprinkler and the distant echo of a car passing down the street. The air felt heavy, thick with everything neither of us had dared to say. She stood close, closer than she ever had, the warmth of her body brushing mine with every subtle shift. I could feel the faint quiver in her hands as they hovered near my chest, fingers brushing against the fabric of my shirt, and my own pulse throbbed in reply. "I shouldn't," she began, voice trembling, almost swallowed by the distance we tried to maintain. I silenced her with a look, though my hands remained suspended in the air, hovering near her arms. "I know," I whispered, low and deliberate. "But neither of us wants that, do we?" Her eyes met mine, wide, searching, and I could see the storm of fear, desire, and guilt swirling there. She leaned slightly forward, testing the space, and I felt the tension tighten like a wire around my chest. Every instinct screamed to close it, to erase the distance that had held us at bay for so long. I reached out slowly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Her eyes fluttered closed for a second at the contact, and I caught the faint tremor of her lips as she exhaled. My fingers lingered against her cheek, tracing the line of her jaw as if memorizing it, while her hand finally found mine, fingers interlocking naturally, urgently. The world outside, the neighbor, the age gap, all the reasons this was wrong, faded to a background hum. Nothing existed but the inches between us, the soft warmth of her breath, the shared heartbeat I could feel in the small of my chest. I can't stop thinking about you," I admitted, my voice low, almost a rasp. Her lips parted slightly, as though that simple truth had already been the answer she'd been waiting for. She leaned into my hand, pressing herself closer, and I could feel the soft curve of her body, the subtle tremor in her shoulders. A long pause stretched between us. Neither of us moved, yet everything had shifted. Desire, fear, longing, all tangled into something messy and undeniable. I wanted to close the gap completely, but there was a sliver of hesitation, a final breath of restraint that made it feel human, precarious, alive. Then she whispered, barely audible, "Are we really doing this?" I smiled faintly, brushing my thumb along her knuckles. "We're doing what we've been trying to avoid," I said softly. "But maybe it's worth it." Her lips quivered in response, and I saw the flicker of relief, longing, and trust pass across her face. She took a small step forward, closing the last inch, and I felt her forehead rest lightly against mine. Every nerve in my body was alert, breath mingling, fingers entwined, hearts hammering in the same rhythm. I tilted my head, careful, deliberate, and she mirrored the motion. The space between our lips disappeared in that heartbeat, and we held it, teetering, suspended, electric. It was messy and perfect all at once, trembling, human, desperate to exist fully in this shared moment. Finally, our lips met, soft at first, almost hesitant, a brush that confirmed everything we hadn't yet said. The kiss deepened slightly, patient, exploratory, and in that single movement, we understood each other completely. All the fear, the guilt, the longing, it didn't vanish, but it became part of the intimacy, part of the connection that had grown between us, raw and undeniable. When we pulled back just enough to breathe, our foreheads still pressed together, I whispered her name. She smiled softly, leaning into me, and I realized we didn't need words anymore. Every glance, every brush of skin, every trembling hand spoke volumes. We were no longer apart. We were together, messy, human, and entirely ours. The evening had settled softly around the driveway, and the fading light draped us in a gentle glow. After the kiss, everything felt quieter, heavier, and lighter all at once. We didn't speak immediately, words seemed almost unnecessary after the storm of what had passed between us. She leaned against me, forehead resting lightly on my chest. I could feel her breath even out, her heartbeat slowing, though mine was still erratic, carried by the adrenaline of surrendering to something we'd both denied for so long. My hand cradled the back of her neck, fingers brushing the soft nape of her hair. It was intimate in a way that made all the rules and fears of the world fall away, leaving just us. "You're really here," she murmured, her voice soft, tinged with wonder. She tilted her head up slightly, and I caught the faintest glimmer of a smile on her lips. "After all this, after everything." I pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and grounding. "I've never not been," I whispered. "I just needed you to know it could be real. That it could be us, despite everything." Her hand slipped into mine, fingers curling tightly around mine as if to anchor herself, and me, at the same time. The warmth of that contact made the last remnants of hesitation dissolve. The age difference, the neighbor's curiosity, the societal expectations, they felt distant now, like shadows retreating at the edge of a bright fire. We stepped back together slowly, neither letting go, moving toward the car not to clean it, not for any practical reason, but simply to exist in the same space. We laughed quietly at something trivial, our nerves, our relief, the absurdity of the tension that had gripped us all afternoon. And yet, each laugh was threaded with intimacy, shared only between us, unspoken truths lurking beneath the surface. At last, we sank onto the curb beside the car, close enough to touch without thinking. Our shoulders brushed, our fingers remained intertwined. She leaned against me fully this time, head resting lightly on my shoulder, eyes closing for just a moment as if letting herself relax into the reality of what we had finally allowed. I could feel her warmth seeping into me, steady and real. "I was scared," she admitted quietly, almost to herself, almost as a confession to the night. "That it wouldn't feel right. That people would judge. That I'd ruin it." I tightened my hold slightly, resting my chin atop her hair. "It's messy," I said softly, "and maybe the world might not understand. But it feels right. With you. Always with you." Her lips curved into a soft, vulnerable smile. She turned her face, brushing her cheek against mine, and the contact sent a gentle shiver through both of us. "Then I guess we're doing this," she said, a quiet certainty threading her tone. I pressed my lips to her temple, lingering there as if marking a promise. "Yes. This. Us." The night deepened around us, but we didn't move. We didn't need to. Just sitting there, bodies close, hands entwined, sharing the warmth and the quiet, felt like everything we had been building toward, messy, human, intimate, and entirely ours. There were no words left that mattered more than the rhythm of our breathing, the brush of skin, the subtle smiles that crossed our faces. Finally, she whispered against my shoulder, "I never thought it could feel like this." "Neither did I admitted, smiling faintly. "But here we are." And in the hush of the evening, on that quiet driveway, nothing else existed. Just her and me, together at last, fully, completely, and unafraid. 23.